I have built my career on managing wealth for extremely wealthy individuals. And in that time, I have picked up some life-changing tips and pearls of wisdom and how they have not only acquired wealth, but grown it over time. They've also shared with me habits that they picked up whilst they were younger that a lot of people don't actually practice today. So in this video, I thought to share this knowledge with you in hopes that it helps you on your journey to financial freedom and building your own wealth. This sort of knowledge is not something that you necessarily pick up from school. When you are in the academic sphere, you are being prepped essentially to become a worker. But these are things that I've learned outside my academic pursuits that I really wished I knew in my 20s. However, it's not too late to pick up these habits and build financial wealth for yourself. One thing that a lot of my clients have in common is that they didn't build their wealth through their salaried income. So basically, they didn't have just one stream of income. And again, this wasn't something that they were necessarily taught in school. For some people, their wealth was passed down in terms of inheritances, and for others, they built their wealth through a regular job. But one thing a lot of them have in common is multiple streams of income. Now, if you think about your time in school, you are essentially focused on one or two subjects. So you might have a degree in IT or agriculture or medicine. These degrees prepare you for a specific skill set, and they help you build a specific skill set when you get into industry. Whilst you are being educated in school, you're not taught the different skill sets that you might need for a ubiquitous option of careers. You're only sort of taught what you need to know for that specific sector that you are looking to go into. And so having multiple streams of income isn't necessarily something that we pick up in school. Investing rather than saving. Now, this was one of the mistakes I made in my early 20s. When I earned, I would essentially put my earnings into a savings account as opposed to putting it in an investment portfolio where I could be earning dividends or coupon payments through investing in fixed income products, for instance. I always saved. The downside of that is, of course, because it's a savings account, it's more easily accessible. And so what I did was often I would pull from my savings account into my current account and spend it on frivolous items. Wealthy people tend to invest rather than save. A lot of people tend to spend 70% of their income and maybe save 30% of their income. From my experience and what I've seen is a habit with wealthy people is that they save 70% of their income and spend 30%. Of course, that's very dependent on your income level. For some people, they aren't necessarily able to save from their income because it's on the lower side. But of course, as your income level increases, it's definitely a good idea to start thinking about saving a large portion of your income so the funds that you've put aside can be used as investment capital. Using your ISA or your Roth IRA accounts. I've actually done a video on ISA accounts and the benefits you can gain from using an ISA account as opposed to a normal shares and fund account. With an ISA account, you get a tax protection. So whatever income or whatever funds you put into an ISA is protected or shielded from any taxation. So as your capital grows and you experience capital gains on your investments, or indeed if you are paid any dividends into your ISA account, these funds are protected from taxation. So if you think about it, you've been taxed at source, which is your salary. You don't really want to go through another layer of taxation on your investments. So using an ISA account, that's an individual savings account, essentially protects your investment from double taxation. Learn the basics of personal finance. This is an extremely salient point if you do want to build your wealth over time and essentially grow the same. Now, when I talk about basics of personal finance, I mean having a handle on how much you earn versus how much you have to spend and how much you can actually save out of your income. Also, understanding basics of things like interest, dividend payments, taxation, etc. In most countries, your income is taxed at a higher rate than your investments. So your capital gains taxation or your actual income taxation from your interests, your coupons, and your dividends. And this is why wealthy people actually make a large percentage of their wealth from investments rather than their salaried income. Take more risks. I am super guilty of not taking any risks in my 20s. I was always the one to play it safe. I always saved rather than invested, at least in the earlier part of my 20s. I got smarter midway through my 20s and I started investing. Without taking risks, you are most likely unable to really build your wealth. You have to start taking calculated risks so you can at least have a chance of earning more. I like to look at things on a risk-adjusted basis. What I mean by that is, let's say Bitcoin, for instance. Of course, we all know that Bitcoin is extremely volatile and a very risky investment. You should always do your own research before you invest in things or speak to someone who's qualified to essentially guide you through the risks, rewards, and the variables that go with investing. But the way I like to think about Bitcoin is that within that volatility presents a large opportunity to make nice and healthy returns. So from my perspective, I might view Bitcoin as being a very attractive risk-adjusted investment. Wealthy individuals tend to take a lot more calculated risks than everybody else. Tied into that point is the fact that you don't have your entire life to figure it out. When you are younger, you might be encouraged by your lovely parents to think that you have all the time in the world, but in my opinion, this is actually a false sense of safety. You don't have all the time in the world to figure it out. And if you invest in your 20s, your investment essentially has a longer period over which it can compound and grow itself than if you started investing, say, in your 30s or your 40s. So it's really important to think about investing earlier on as opposed to wait until later on in life, where you have a shorter period over which to grow your wealth. The final and one of the most important points is that wealthy people use debt in a very, very smart way. Whilst wealthy people and millionaires use debt to essentially grow their wealth, poor people, on the other hand, use debt to finance their consumption. And here's an example. In finance, there is a term called leveraged portfolios. This is where you actually borrow against your portfolio of stocks, for example, and you invest the debt that you borrowed back into the stocks. Now, if the yield and the capital gains on your portfolio is greater than the interest you pay on the debt, on a netted basis, you've actually increased your return versus what you have to pay in terms of interest on the debt or the loan element. So let's say you own a portfolio worth $100,000 and you borrow $500,000 against that $100,000 portfolio. And let's say that the rate on your debt or your loan is 5%, but the yield on your portfolio is 8 to 10%. On average, you're actually making a margin of 3 to 5%. So it means that you are making a margin of return using debt. And this is the difference between how wealthy people approach debt versus everybody else. So I do hope this video has been informative and helpful. These are definitely pointers that I wish I knew earlier on in my career. Don't forget to share this video with someone who you think might benefit from it, and I will see you in the next one.